Here's a test. I've got jobs in here from Israel, England, Australia, Holland right now, all over the place. You want to make sure what you're doing is right so you can test your clutch. Actually, just put a set of channel locks on this lever, the actuating lever, move it, and watch this boss. Everything's moving correctly. These plates are loosening up. That's fine. Alright, at this point I've got a really tight bottom end. I'm happy with that. And next thing we're going to do is put the top end together. Best advice I can give you here, use quality parts, don't even screw around. Wiseco piston, rings, pin, clips, OEM Yamaha gaskets. Really important on the base, I'll explain that later. Alright, you want to look at your piston. Wiseco's a top-notch company, but again, things that are mass-produced, you want to look at stuff and make sure you're not going to run into problems. First thing I do is I put the pin in. That's my test. That should be happening. If it's not, call Wiseco. Something's not working right for you. Pistons are made in America. Pins, unfortunately, overseas, man, Taiwan. So check this stuff out, make sure it's working good. The other thing you want to look at on your piston, make sure, and I never find them, once in a blue moon I'll find a feather, but make sure there's no burrs. Any of these machine surfaces, no burrs in here. If there are, it's very easily corrected. You can use a piece of sandpaper, worst case scenario, but I like to use the carbide, actually diamond tipped wheels on my Fordham, and I'll go ahead and knock these burrs off and then just hit it with some 220 grit. But just make sure there's no burrs here. You shouldn't find any. I mean, this product's ready to install, but just check it. It's good peace of mind. Again, piston inspected. I went ahead and I put one clip in, and what I do is I just put this pin in and just work it in there. The opening of the clip has to be either straight up or straight down. Think about what this thing's doing. It's moving up and down, probably 350 miles an hour, coming up, coming to a dead stop. That's inertia. That clip, if it's open on this side or this side, is going to start going like this. It's going to break and you're going to have all kinds of problems. So the opening of the clip, either straight up or straight down. Next thing I'm going to do is put the top end bearing in, and we just take our little two-stroke oil bottle, Super M, a little lube in here on the rod, pre-lube bearing, top end bearing. This is a B1005 Wiseco part number. Next thing we'll do is put the piston in. Next step, we're getting ready to put the piston in, is just go ahead and lube the pin bores inside of the piston. A little bit of oil will travel through there. And then, my cameraman left. Just go ahead and slide that pin right through the rod and the top end bearing, and the next thing I'm going to do is put the clip in on the other side. Next thing we're going to do is install the second pin retaining clip, and again, straight up or straight down. What I would recommend is you pack this with some kind of dunnage. You just clean paper towels, make sure the clip doesn't fall on the bottom of the engine. If this particular clip fell in this particular engine, we could probably get it out. Some of them you're never going to be able to get it out, but just pack that up so you don't make any boo-boos, and install this clip either straight up or straight down. And a good insurance policy, I go in there with this and I check and I make sure it's absolutely seated in that groove. If you screw this up, this retaining clip is going to come out, get lodged in a transfer port, and you're going to have a big problem. And everything you just did, you just wasted all your money. So make sure that these clips are seated where they're supposed to be. Okay, we've got our piston in, both of our clips, everything's all set. Next step, I'm going to take some two-stroke oil and I'm going to lube up this rod a little bit. And this thing is going to smoke like hell when we start it, but that's good. I want oil. I want oil on the startup. Right, I went ahead and installed the rings, but you want to check end gap. End gap is the space between the butt ends of the rings, And check these for burrs too. Make sure you got no burrs. We didn't have anything. Weisco did a good job with this. You just want to slide your ring inside of your cylinder. Multiply your bore diameter times 0.004. That will give you your proper end gap clearance. And I've done videos on this, so I don't want to get too redundant with this, but when you drop that ring in, just put a feeler gauge. On this particular model, it's 11 thousandths, 11, 12 thousandths, you're going to be fine. But just make sure you've got the minimum ring end gap. Next thing we're going to do is lube everything up and slide our brand new KOR. Look at her, she's a thing of beauty. KOR ported cylinder on there. We're getting ready to lube the piston here, and one thing I didn't point out, and people have made this mistake, and again, you know, at the risk of sounding redundant, the intake side on these blasters, you're going to see two portholes. They have to point towards the intake. Alright, so don't put your piston on backwards. The other way you can tell is the pins for the rings, which are here and here. I marked them with a little bit of black Sharpie. Those go towards the intake as well. And all I do, I don't overly lube this stuff. There's no reason to. I just use this little brush. I'm just going to brush a little oil on it and do that on the piston. I'm going to do the same thing to the cylinder, just lube the cylinder and slide it together. Next thing I'm going to do is we're going to install the base gasket. And what you want to do, this area of the case right here, I just scratched that with a little razor blade, and like I said, you know, earlier in the video, make sure you put this on really thin. But right now I'm just going to take a little bit of this 1104 and I'm going to put it on both spots of this case, just in case there's any misalignment. And there's not. I checked it, but again, we don't take chances in this business. And put that on. Next thing is your gasket, and I was surprised how many people never notice this. If you look at this gasket, the holes, there we go, they're smaller on this side, they're bigger on this side. This gasket is not ambidextrous. It can only go on one way. So the bigger holes go over the gudgeon or alignment pins on this side of the cylinder, and just get that gasket seated, and then we're ready to put the cylinder on. Alright, just a quick note about these Yamaha OEM, excuse me, I've been talking a lot today. These OEM base gaskets, there's a difference. There's a lot of aftermarket gaskets that are available to you. Don't buy them. Cometic, fine. No problem with Cometic gaskets. Or OEM Yamaha base gaskets. The problem is, the aftermarket companies are making these out of paper. What happens, and I've finally figured out why it happens, but what happens is the gaskets, the paper gaskets will actually suck in and develop an air leak, and that's because you guys don't own torque wrenches. And to torque this, you need a crow's foot or a special tool, and I'll show you that when we torque it on. We have it, we built it, but if you over torque here, what's happening is you're distorting the base of the cylinder, and it's not locking here the way that it should be, and that gasket is getting pushed in. The Yamaha and the Cometic gasket are steel on the inside. This is some kind of graphite coating they put on the top and the bottom of it, and Cometic does the same thing. So I cannot stress this enough. Do not ever put a paper gasket on the base of your cylinder on the Yamaha blaster. Use OEM or Cometic gaskets only. We'll put the cylinder on next. I've seen this happen more times than I even care to remember. You have to make sure the rings, the gap in the rings, are lined up with the pins inside of the piston. So get them close, and it doesn't hurt to mark it a little bit with a Sharpie, whatever, and just go ahead and squeeze the top ring. Don't worry about the bottom ring at this point, and just go ahead, slide the cylinder over that top ring, and then get your second ring aligned, and just like that. There should be no resistance. If there's any resistance, your rings are not lined up, and you're going to do serious damage to this if you even attempt to assemble it. At this point, just start working your cylinder a little bit. Get it lined up, keep it straight, get it right over its gudgeon pins. She's home. There you go. Everything moving nice, no resistance. Good top end. Alright, back to business. Cylinder's on, and like I said, you know, you can't get a torque wrench in here. You may have crow's feet or whatever, but what we came up with was this. We just took a wrench, cut it off, welded it to a socket that I can mount my torque wrench on, and you actually have room to get this in here, and we're going to torque these down to 20 foot-pounds. If you don't have a torque wrench and you got to get in there, I mean, just use your judgment. Whatever you do, don't over-tighten those nuts. Alright, here's our torque wrench. We did calculate, because I mean you have leverage here. This wrench makes it longer, so that throws your torque off, and we calculated this at 10%, so I dropped it off 10% at 18 foot-pounds, and this is what we do to get this thing torqued in, and I'll do that all the way around the base of the cylinder. Alright, we got a cylinder all torqued on. Next thing we're going to do is put the head gasket on. You can tell which direction. It says up on it. That means it goes up. And this goes to the front. I use ultra copper on this. Manual doesn't tell you to do that, but I do it. It's a copper head gasket. It's not going to hurt anything. And again, I'm not in the business of taking these things back. I'm in the business of getting them done, getting them out the door, and making sure they never come back again. So we just spray a little bit on, let that dry for a couple minutes, and we'll go ahead and install it on top of the engine. Alright, let's face it, I'm not going to live forever. That's one of the biggest reasons I do these videos, but you know, kind of get the newer kids out there and let them experiment. But one of my favorite newer kids is Tarmo T-Rock, the big Estonian gorilla. And this is his first cylinder head that he did in here. Tarmo is a fantastic fabricator and an unbelievable machinist. He humbles me. I mean, the guy's just fantastic. So Tarmo cut this head yesterday with his big broken leg. And what we got here is 11-degree angle here, 10.5 millimeters wide, 20-degree blend angle. And this is all proprietary tooling. I'm not even going to discuss this stuff, what we're doing here. But this is a special tool that we have that actually cuts this out. It's all about getting it done right, keeping everything the same, and getting it done fast. I mean, that's how we keep your prices down. But Tarmo did this head, and he did a fantastic job. We came out at 19.5 cc's. This engine's going to push about 155 pounds of crank compression, so I'll show you how we get the head on next.